Hello and welcome to the International Schools Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Taylor, and on the podcast we discuss all aspects of technology and life in international schools, with new episodes live every 2 weeks. We focus on people who are currently working in schools, and we talk about life in their current country and dive into some specific topics. The podcast is brought to you by ACER for Education. People always ask what Chromebooks we recommend and what Windows laptops we recommend, and after trying literally all of them, we always recommend ACER. If you'd like to get more info and try out some devices, please just go to gg.gg/ACER Education. That's gg.gg/ACER Education, and we'll get right back to you. Also, the podcast is brought to you by Apps Events. We're a Google partner. We work all around the world. We've just got one piece of new information right now. This is in January 2021. We're a G Suite Enterprise for Education partner. That's Giuseppe. This is a bunch of premium tools available to people using Google at their schools. We can help you get set up with a free 1-month trial. So please check out the link in the show notes and we'll do that right away. And now, on to the interview. Hi, welcome to the International Schools Podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be talking to Lawrence Tijjani. I've known Lawrence for quite a while, and he's an interesting guy because he was a former teacher, did some IT roles at schools, and then became an entrepreneur. I've worked with him a lot at our Google events, but he also does a bunch of other things. So I'm keen to know Lawrence's story and also how he juggles all these different projects, non-profits, and different things. So Lawrence, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me.
So Lawrence, I mean, it'd be good to talk about your background. I know a little bit. I know you grew up in South London. What do you want to talk us a bit through what your sort of background is and before you got into education?
Okay, yeah. So grew up in South London, Bermondsey, and went to school actually in Bermondsey as well, and didn't do great at school. Wasn't the most studious student. Actually failed all my GCSEs and had to go on to college to resit them. And I think actually failing my GCSEs kind of set me up for life and actually taught me about resilience as well.
How were your parents? Your parents must have been pretty, were they pretty annoyed about it, or did they take it pretty well?
So I come from a Nigerian background, so they didn't take it well. And, I felt absolutely awful, particularly for my mum, because she came over to the UK from Nigeria with nothing and, sacrificed her dreams to put opportunities on the table for myself. And at that young age, I didn't really understand that and took, the opportunities for granted. So, it was the first time where my mum didn't shout. It was just that look of disappointment. And, when a parent looks at you disappointed, it's the hardest thing to accept, you rather they shout at you or something, but it was just like, okay,
Yeah. So you went to like a sixth form college, or was just a different college to retake them? Is that right?
So yeah, went to a sixth form college that was located in southwest London, and even that experience of enrolling kind of shaped the teacher that I wanted to be, because on enrollment day I had to go up to the desk and ask to enroll. Now, there was this gentleman on the other side of the table. I call him a gentleman now because I'm a bit more mature and older and, can take that. But he looked at my results and then took a sigh and was like, I don't think education's for you. Maybe you should go and do something with your hands. And that's not me knocking anyone who's got a trade or anything like that. But what that showed me was I was put into a box straight away. There was no context of, was there a reason behind I got these results? It's just that they saw these grades and was like, this is where you need to go, essentially. So I had to fight to actually resit my exam on GCSEs.
Yeah, and I guess they let you. And did you do A levels or something after that? You stayed at the same place, did you?
Yeah, so I reset my GCSEs. I did extremely well in them. So it wasn't about not being able to do it. It was just a lack of application in school, and just being a bit of an idiot, to be honest. And then went on to do, I I think they're called advanced level vocations. So they're
Yeah.
equivalent to A levels. And I picked those because I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be around in IT. So I
Yeah.
did that and did maths for the first year at AS, but dropped that in the second year because it hurt my head.
Yeah.
And then went on to university. So got good grades, went on to university, studied software engineering,
Yeah.
and got a degree in that. And
Were
using
you
that
living at
degree
home
actually.
still? Did you do a student experience, or you just lived at home through? Because I guess you were quite close by.
So what was interesting about that is I don't know, how can I say this? I became quite mature after I didn't pass my GCSEs. So I
Yeah.
actually stayed in London. I actually had moved out from home at 16, so I had a
Right.
council flat. So on top of that, I was, going to uni, but from a very young age, having to pay for my bills and everything and working on top of that as well. And I actually didn't spend my maintenance grant. I actually saved that and worked through uni as much as possible.
See, I worked all through university, and like, I mean, obviously, there's some people for whatever medical conditions that can't work. But I think for most people, if you're able to work, I just don't know why people don't do that, and because people saddle themselves with way too much debt now. I mean, when I went, it was easy because it was free. But I still don't understand why everyone hasn't got jobs through university. It's just it's setting yourself up for such a uphill battle in life if you take on a lot of debt, and come out of it after 3 years or 4 years with a lot of debt.
I think it's that. I think it is the debt as well. But I think what it taught me was actually balancing and actually what life was really like.
Yeah,
Of that, you're going to have to do many things at one time and juggle stuff.
yeah,
So for me, it was the best decision to actually work through university. It allowed me to be kind of very, careful how I spent my time and who I gave it to.
yeah,
Because if I wasn't in the library, I was picking up extra shifts to get through university. I
yeah,
I actually remember there was one day I had a deadline. I'd finished a 12-hour shift in Canary Wharf, 'cause I used to work in Marks and Spencer's, and then went straight to my university library and had a
yeah,
nap in the library and carried on with the assignment and got in. And that's the kind of graft and grit that I actually, developed. And that was from actually failing. If I trace it back, it was from failing and not wanting to ever fail again and have that taste
yeah.
in my mouth, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. What years were at university, by the way? I'm just thinking because I actually worked in Canary Wharf and I used to go to that Marks and Spencer's all the time, and it was in the late 90s I worked there. I don't know what university. I wonder if I ever actually met you in Marks and Spencer's.
I don't, I can't remember the age from, but it wasn't in the 90s. Definitely
No.
in the 90s, I was still in school.
Oh, you were
So
still in school, yeah. It would
yeah.
have been 2000s. Yeah, was I there? No, hang on. I'm losing track of time completely. Maybe it was the early 2000s I worked there. I'd have to look it up. I don't know. Yeah. I lose track. It just gets so confusing with the change from 90s to 2000s. I just lose track of
Yeah.
time completely.
I think it would have been around 2005, 2007, I reckon. I would have been in Canary
Yeah,
Wharf.
yeah. Cool. So you went to university, you got through that. And what did you just decide you wanted to get a job for a school, or were you looking at different things?
So a mixture of things actually happened. If I just take it back to kind of university, and this is how I kind of got into teaching, was during university, I was meant to go on a sandwich year, which is a placement year essentially in
Yeah,
industry. And I had that all set up. I was gonna go and work for a networking company in Angel, but I had a severe epileptic attack. So I suffer from epilepsy. I was diagnosed when I was 16, but I had a severe epileptic attack in university, and I had, I think, about 4 repeat seizures. So I went into hospital, but when I woke up, I thought I was back in college.
really.
So yeah, so university, the last
Well, you had some
two
like memory
years,
loss, you mean? Oh,
yeah, memory loss, yeah.
oh wow.
Yeah, so the last 2 years of university were non-existent, you know. Um,
So you still can't remember them to this day, can you?
so that's the funny thing when people ask me, "Do you remember that?" I'm like, I don't know what I don't remember.
Yeah,
It's very hard to kind of say, yeah, I've got everything back. there are moments when people mention stuff to me and I'm like, I have no recollection of that. Don't know what you're talking about. So I couldn't fulfill my placement. I had a decision to make in that summer, was to either repeat my second year because it was during the exam period. But because I was already behind on kind of my deadline, because I failed my GCSEs, I decided no, I want to do it during the summer. So actually, I had to learn everything for the second year.
Oh,
And
wow.
I only had to think of it was about 2 months for the reset period, because that's the only time I could have done it. And I learned everything. I didn't pass with great grades, but it was enough for me to actually progress on to the sandwich year. And that's when I got in contact with my old secondary school and said, look, I'm in this predicament. Would it be possible to come and do my placement year there in your networking department, in your IT department? And they said, yeah, absolutely. Well, we'd love to help you. So went to there to do networking. But as I was there, I kind of saw young people making the same mistakes that I had made during, class, just messing about, prattling about. And I started talking to them. And the head teacher had picked up that I had a group of young boys that I would talk to at lunchtime and who would come and speak to me. And then she made it her duty during that year to get me to come into teaching, because she saw something in me. She saw the rapport that I had with young people. So she offered me a job during the placement year to say, look, once you graduate, you've got a job. And I turned it down initially. I said, no, I'm going off into the city. I'm going to go and do, software development or anything like that. And she said, okay, but I understand that you have a business. Is that right? I was like, yeah. And she goes, how about if I give you 4 days working here and 1 day off, but paid at the same time as well? And I was like, that's a great thing. Like, didn't know what was coming out. It allowed me to continue to run my own business on the side. And
So
I
what
thought,
was,
absolutely,
we missed that part out. What was your business? What were you doing already?
so web design and development.
Right.
That was my second business. My first business was a clothing line that didn't really go well. That was actually me just doing it for the culture and doing whatever everyone else was doing, but it wasn't my passion at all. And that was a good learning curve for me as well. Don't do stuff because other people are doing it. Do it because you're interested in it and it's what you want to do.
Yeah, definitely. So you started doing web design. Was this when you were at university? You were making websites for people, or what kind of stuff were you doing?
So we started it in college. I started it with my business partner in the back of an A-level lesson. And we came up with the idea. We started to design flyers, and then we said, oh, websites, let's try websites. And we started to do some free websites for people. And then people actually start to approach us and say, look, we'll pay for you to do this. And this was right at the beginning. So we were just creating websites in HTML, hard coding them. It wasn't a CMS. So we self-taught ourselves to do it. And we was like, okay, we can make a bit of money from this. And it's still running today. It's called Happy2Host. And like now we work with football players, schools. We've worked with Sony, Tesco, just a range of different businesses. Well.
Definitely. Well, we'll definitely get onto that and how you grew that in a sec. But so how did it go of getting a school job? You said, I remember you told me you didn't do a PGC, you did there's some other way you managed to get into it. How did you do all that?
Yeah, so I did a GTP, a graduate training program. So that allows you to work and train on the job as well. So you have a couple of days where you're released each term to go down to Canterbury University and, do the pedagogy alongside actually actively being on the job. And you would have to collect your evidence while teaching. So I think compared to the PGCE, you get quite a heavy timetable from the beginning. So you literally, after 2 weeks, you've got the timetable and you're responsible for those classes. You're in there by yourself teaching, and I'll never forget the kind of first day I had my class. Was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I think this is how to teach. And, I was really worried about the kids and how they respond to me. But it went all right. And I think I did quite well because I taught for 10 years. So
wow, so 10 years. So during that time, were you did you get other businesses on the go? Or were you just working on, as I say, but were you working on growing your web hosting business? Was that something you were growing in parallel, or did you do anything else at the time?
So during the 10 years, I had that work parallel the web design business alongside
Yeah,
that, and that's where that Friday that came in, because that was the day where I was off from school, came in to do that. But anyone knows who's a teacher is, part-time doesn't really exist in
yeah,
teaching, because even when you're off, you're trying to play catch up with the marking or other stuff. And
yeah.
I had actually become a head of faculty in the last 5 years. So
Right.
even though I was off, I was getting loads of phone calls about students and other bits as well that I was doing. So I actually had to adopt a way of still trying to make sure that business was growing. And the way
Yeah,
I did that was actually waking up early.
yeah,
So I would wake up around 4:35 in order to start that, to get what needs to get done before I actually went into school,
I
you
think that's
know.
one of the biggest productivity hacks. I've only discovered this in the last year. I used to always get up before I had kids. I used to get up at like 9. Because I work for myself, and I'm on a different schedule to most people, so I don't have to unless I've got a specific meeting. But now I've got young children. Like I get up like pretty similar to you, like 5 o'clock. Like if I take this morning, I got up at 5, took the dog out, made a coffee, and then like 5 till 7 before the kids woke up. Like I got so much work done. My brain is just on fire that time in the morning. That's bang, 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 bang. I get out the big tasks that I normally just put off because I don't want to do them. Like I just get them done. And like for me, I'm just doing it almost every day now. And that 2 hours, sometimes it's an hour and a half, like is the best time. And sometimes if I just did that, I'd have had a good day.
Absolutely. I mean, I call that like my magic hour,
Yeah,
because like you said, anything that's a big task or anything I know is going to be difficult and requires a lot of brain power, I will attack in those at that time, because I don't get disturbed. No,
yeah,
no one's really awake around that time, so it
yeah,
allows me to just focus on that. There's not emails coming in where I get distracted. Just see that email pop in, and then I move away from that task. So yeah, I love actually waking up early to get stuff done, and also it's a reward for yourself. It means effectively you can finish it early if you wanted to, because you've actually
yeah.
got a lot of stuff out of the way. So
Yeah,
that's how I work.
I try to do that now. Yeah, also with the kids, I'll quite often leave her like 3, 4, 5. After I've got them up, I'll go into. I've got my office. I'll come in here and stick around. But I rarely work evenings now. Almost never. I mean, I quite often do stuff. If I have to do stuff, I do stuff on weekends. I mean, again, I mean, probably you had the same experience. Like when I was starting my business, I was working like every day of the week, like something. I didn't always work a full day on the weekend. I mean, I'd regularly work full day Saturday, full day Sunday, but I always worked every day of the week for several years. There was never a weekend I didn't work. I don't know what your experience was.
So definitely worked on the weekends, and I still do now, but I don't work the whole day.
Yeah,
So again, on a Saturday, I'd get up about maybe 6, 7, but work until about 10, and that's it. And
yeah,
then kind of spend the rest of the day with family or whatever it is, or something for myself. But
yeah,
on Sunday evening, I like to do kind of a brain dump of like, look, what do I need to achieve in this coming week, and kind of
yeah,
set my week up and set my calendar up. And one of the things that I've tried to get a lot better on is living by my calendar. So actually, I put nearly everything I can in my calendar, down to actually chill time.
yeah,
So that chill time is protected. Like I wouldn't have no meetings in that period.
yeah.
I even put stuff in like going out for a walk. So I live by my calendar. If it's not in my calendar, it doesn't exist. That's kind of my
Interesting.
mindset
Yeah,
there.
yeah. I do that
Mm.
sometimes on a Sunday night. Like I need to do it, and I always like appreciate it when I do it. But it's just getting. I don't do it every week. Sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it's a great tip though. I know very productive people I know always do that Sunday, preparation for the week ahead. Yeah, and it's weird. Like I schedule a lot of things, but I hate meetings. Like I mean, if I've got one thing in my diary, I'm like, oh, and it's great. It's a bad thing to say, because it's not a good characteristic. I really wish I looked forward to it. But like I've got some in my calendar. I'm just like, oh no, I've got to do it. So I think for me, if I could pile everything up Monday, Tuesday or something, that would be the best way to do it. I had loads and loads of meetings, and then a few days where I've got some open time to do stuff. It's I love having open days, and I can just like Friday this week, for example. I've got nothing scheduled. I just work on different things. And I really, that's what I'd enjoy the most, having that kind of time, you know?
No, definitely. And what I do with meetings, because I know what you mean, Dan, about meetings. I kind of block book my meetings. So
Yeah,
I have
that's
a
the way to do
window
it.
of like it might be 10 to 1. But after 1, I might not actually have any other meetings on purpose. And that's to
Yeah,
get tasks done that I necessarily wouldn't get done as well. Because I find sometimes you can go for a whole day of a meeting and then you turn around and go, what have I actually achieved for myself? What have
yeah,
I actually done that brings the business on to the next step?
yeah.
So that I'm very careful with meetings and what I put in and
It's
when.
funny. I got a good friend of mine. He's just come back to London. He's been in Seattle for many years. Very senior guy at Amazon, like top 100 people in the whole of Amazon. And the way he works is he just pretty much sits in the conference room all day. And he's got 2 assistants. They just make meetings for him. And he actually has to schedule like 30 minutes if he wants to go out and get a sandwich or something. If he doesn't do that, his whole day for like 10 hours is just meetings, like every day. That's all he does. Like, people just come in, next person comes in, next person comes in. I'm like, that would drive me nuts. I don't think I could do that.
Yeah, I don't know how you process what's been going on. Like I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Yeah, exactly. But you had the web business on the side, and you're teaching, and then at some point, I guess you decided to go full time with the entrepreneurial stuff. Like, what was the transition? Because I talked to a lot of teachers looking to do entrepreneurial things. And I think the first thing I usually say is, look, do what you did. Like, if do this, even if you don't get a free day, evenings and weekends, because you're only going to know if you actually enjoy doing something, if you actually do it, rather than just leaving your job with no income and then starting a business. I think it's definitely the best way to get it going, and then see if you enjoy it. But what was your experience? Like, why did you decide to leave, and what were you doing at the time?
So again, it was another interesting one there. So I had been thinking about it, but if I'm gonna be completely honest, I was scared to take the jump,
Yeah,
and that there was always something, I say in quotations, that was holding me back. But it wasn't really. It was maybe I got a promotion. Every time I mentioned I want to go and do this full time, I said, "Look, we've got this for you here." But actually, what allowed me or made me leave teaching in the end was actually my health.
yeah.
So I had a severe epileptic attack, another one, and this is different from university now, and that was about 6, 7 years ago, and this is the worst one that I've ever had. So it was on the last day of term, um, and I was in my office and was feeling a bit dizzy, and then collapsed. But on the way down to collapsing and having my attack, I hit my neck on an oak desk in my office.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so I think they said about 10 attacks back to back, and
Did someone call an ambulance pretty quick? Did someone see it happening?
yeah. So one of the people saw it happening when they're walking past my office, and they alerted a member of staff, and yeah, so had to go to hospital, A&E, was in a neck brace, and everything, had to be sedated to stop the attacks. But when I came back round, I couldn't feel my legs. So
Oh,
this
no.
is like this is maybe the next day, woke up and look really confused, but that's normal with my attacks. But what wasn't normal is I couldn't feel my legs. And alerted my wife to say this is what it was. Doctors came round, they were unsure what had happened, and then I never forget how scared I was to ask the doctor to go, right, will I be able to walk again? Will I feel them again? I didn't do it for a couple of days because I was scared of the answer. And when
Yeah.
I finally plucked up the courage to ask the doctor, he said, look, we take it one day at a time. And basically, when you hear one day at a time, I've been in hospitals enough, is we don't know, essentially,
Yeah, yeah.
and let's not worry about that. So it was for about 4 days, 3 to 4 days, I couldn't feel my legs. And then I think on the fourth day, the feeling came back in my legs, in my lower legs, but it came back from a vengeance in terms of it came back with the most excruciating pain that I've never experienced. I just don't even know how to describe it. The closest thing I could say to it is someone taking a chisel and a hammer and repeatedly knocking on your knees, like
But you could move them.
striking.
You realize that you could actually feel your legs, I guess, at this point. I guess that's some small
Yeah,
concept.
so I could feel my legs, but how the feeling came back in them was the worst feeling ever. And it just kept on feeling like someone had taken a chisel to my leg. So it took me basically, I think, about a year to fully walk again. So I had to learn how to re-walk. I was in hospital for just under 2 months, and I was in a high dependency unit, at Guy's Hospital. And anytime I mention this, I have to say a big thank you to all the staff at Guy's Hospital. They put up with me and did an amazing job. And I mean, the severity of when I looked around on that ward, I had 2 nurses for the majority of my time, and I could not do anything. I was relying on them to help me to the bathroom, to the toilet. Yeah, it was I'm going to be very clear here. It was the most trying and hardest time of my life.
Yeah.
So going back to your question, Dan, I went back to school. Eventually, the school was very supportive. I did a phased return to work, but I found that I was out of school more than I was in school.
Yeah.
And, I felt like I was doing a disservice to the young people that I was teaching. So I decided to leave on that basis, and, didn't really have any plans, but said, you know what, I've got a business. I'm going to throw myself into it and just see where we go with it, essentially. So sometimes, you take that leap of faith, but to be honest, my condition pushed me off that diving board and said, you know what, go for it. So
it's
that's
funny
how I found out full time.
That's great. Yeah, that's a crazy story. I didn't know that. I didn't know that story. That's what's great about this podcast. You talk to people you already know, but you'd find out a lot of stuff you didn't even know about them. What because like often the common route, if like a teacher or someone who works for a school becomes an entrepreneur, they do something related to education. And obviously now, I've worked with you a lot. You're doing a lot of education stuff, but it sounded like in the beginning it wasn't education related. You did stayed with web hosting, the business you already had, and it was something completely different. Is that right?
Yeah, so yes, it was completely different. But what I found was in that last year of teaching at the school, I became responsible for, ICT across the curriculum and stuff like that. And I'd taken my school down the Google journey. So while I was doing the web design, I thought, actually, I've got a skill set here already. I've got a network as well. How could I also utilize that skill alongside what I'm doing? Because I also wanted to be involved in education somehow. And that's when I actually went to a boot camp, the first time where I met Ben Rouse and where I actually discovered Apps Events.
Was that one of our boot camps, was it?
Yeah, it was one of your boot
I didn't realize
that. Yeah. And because I'd been to the back to school stuff, but did the boot camp and did my level 1. And I think I definitely know I was annoying Ben. I was that guy in the session who just kept on putting his hand up and asking questions like, but why? Why do we do this? And why do we do that? And he took it in good stead. He actually then challenged me to go, okay, you could go and do your level 1. Why not do your level 2? Why not do your trainer? And do what I'm doing essentially. So that's how I was able to kind of get into kind of the ed tech world as well, alongside the web design business.
Interesting. Yeah, I was one of the first. I mean, there's some dispute as to who was the first certified trainer in Europe, but I've got a claim, and there's a few people got a claim, but I was one of the first 3, ever to become a trainer, and it was very interesting, and that I credit that with all the things I've done since. It was a small thing becoming a Google trainer, but I was interested in Google for Education, but didn't know that much about it, and now I've done all this other stuff, and I think you can kind of write your own script. That's what I like about entrepreneurship. If you find something you're good at, you can take you down a path and you can do a lot of different stuff, that's kind of the magic of it. It's also the stress of it because, you never know where it's going to go. You've got no pension, you've got no anything, but it is the thing I like about it.
Absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, when I left teaching, it took me probably a year to find myself properly and like what I wanted to do. alongside the web design, because the web design was doing okay, but it wasn't making a significant amount of money. And I was getting to the point where I was like, well, I'm running out of money here. And I think that's the one bit that sometimes isn't shown to people, because everyone's like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur, you know, but actually the fear and, you know, laying awake at night of thinking, right, I need to make more money in order to cover my bills and stuff like that is what sometimes people don't showcase. So there was trying times, believe me, but again, once you get through it and you look back at it, it's everything that's made me to this point, you know. I don't regret it at all, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I get asked all the time about entrepreneurship and should I do it? And it's just an impossible thing to answer, because like, it's definitely not for everybody. Like, it's absolutely, there's a lot of people who should just do a job, you know, but there's a lot of people who shouldn't do a job. And there's a lot of people who maybe should do a job part-time and do a side hustle, you know, and it's really hard to say. I don't know what advice to give other than just try and do something. And if you manage to do something, even if it doesn't make you any money, then maybe you could do it. I don't know what advice you've got to people who want to do entrepreneurial stuff, because do you think it's for everyone, or do you think it's for a certain type of person, or can you become that person?
I think it's for a certain type of person. I think you can become that person as well. But the thing I would say is get comfortable with failing. Like, you know, get comfortable with it, embrace it. Because I think a lot of people go, I've got an idea, right? It's going to make loads of money. It's going to happen. And there's going to be so many setbacks. And I think what kind of separates the entrepreneurs or the ones who actually make it or on the way to making it is they don't give up on the first hurdle. They don't get disheartened, you know, when a certain part of their idea isn't executed. It's actually taking what you can learn from that and taking a step back and going again. So I would suggest to anyone who's thinking about it is get a mentor, you know, research the industry that you want to go into. And I say, make sure you enjoy what you're doing, because there's going to be times where you're up late at night, up early in the morning, thinking, why am I doing this? And the reason why is what will keep you going. If you can identify, this is the passion and this is why I'm up here. Like anything I do is just actually in 10 years time, I'm hoping my life will be a lot more easier. And I'd rather do the hard work now than be at 60 struggling with life. That's just my mindset, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was similar. I think now of a stage I'm at, 'cause I'm a bit older than you, obviously. I think, like, I don't actually think I ever want to retire. I mean, I might want to do different things, but I'm just someone, I have to do something. I have to have things to do. So I'm thinking now to try to, like, because that's the case, you know. I'm never going to retire, I don't think. But I'm trying to, like, spread the retirement through my life. So I'm trying to sort of have, like, take, you know, Fridays off, maybe do 3-4 day weekends sometimes, take more free time, and then, you know, so I've got the energy to do it. But that's different. Like when I was your age, I was just working like 7 days a week. But now I'm at, like, I've kind of thought about it, and I just don't just want to play golf. I mean, I like playing golf and doing, you know, hiking and doing, you know, all these things, but I don't want to do that every day of the week, you know? So I've discovered that as long as I'm, like, mentally and physically able, I'm always going to work, you know, which is kind of that was quite a recent discovery. I think until recently, I always thought I would retire. Now I'm like, I just know that's not going to happen. As long as I can work, I'm still going to do something, you know? And it might be a non-profit, it might be something different, but I'm going to be doing something, you know?
I totally agree with that. I'm a long way from retirement, but the way I look at it is, I think the moment in my head, for me personally, is the moment I kind of retire is like, it's just where kind of I'm just putting a stop to life. For me personally, I think there's so many things that I could go and do. It changes, like you said. It might not be that 7 day energy that you need to do. But like one of the things that I'm currently working on is just a guy foundation. And I certainly see, once I've established the other businesses and they're running independently of themselves, that's what I would put my whole time into. And that is a non-profit that works with underserved communities in the UK. So I think it's about finding, again, what is that new passion? I think people say you need to find one passion and stick to that passion. A passion evolves, it changes over the years as you change as a person, you know.
Well, so yeah, talk about the foundation. Like, I mean, first of all, obviously, you know, you're working with young people. Justaguy.co.uk is a website. It's really, really good website. Like, How, like, I'm just logistically, like, have you incorporated it as like as a non-profit, as a foundation? Do you have to do that from day one, or can you, if someone wants to do something like this, can you just start doing it? And if there's no money involved in the beginning, you don't need to register, or how does that all work?
So when I first started it out, it was just literally a blog, Dan.
Yeah,
It wasn't a foundation. It wasn't a corporation. It was just literally set up to document my recovery from that epileptic attack I talked about a couple
yeah,
of moments ago. But people reached out to me, saw my story, and said, "Look, could you come into our school and speak to our young pupils? Could you speak to our members of staff, like motivation?" And I think that's where the imposter syndrome came in, because of like, why they reached out to me to come and
yeah,
motivate their members of staff and young people, but people found my story or what I've been through in my life inspiring, and they said that should be shared. So I then kind of took it away from being a blog and going, actually, I really enjoy this. I
yeah,
do want to work with young people. I'm really getting something from this. So that's when I turned it into a social enterprise. And it's only in the last year that it's now been incorporated. So it's a CIC, it's a community interest company.
yeah.
That's for non-profit. So any profits that we actually generate from it is reinvested into helping our community people to drive their own social mobility. So that's happened because money started to exchange, because before it was just me doing it free of
Yeah,
charge.
sure. Yeah,
But actually organizations have now come to us and said, look, could you help us, meet young people that we're not getting to? And I think particularly after the George Floyd murder, companies looked at themselves and actually said, are we doing enough?
yeah,
And I think a lot of companies said, no, we're not. So that's where I've now come in as kind of being a middle, an intermediary, you know, untapped talent as well.
yeah,
And that's not just young people, that's adults as well from underserved communities. So that's what the foundation does now. And like, we have a clear kind of mission now in terms of, we do mentoring, we do skills workshops. So anyone can come on and say, look, I want to give back. I want to do a 30-minute talk to young people about the certain skills that I use in my industry. And we've
yeah.
done a range of things from careers fairs, step up with digital skills as well. And we've got loads of plans for 2021, 2022.
Are you focusing on kids from like sort of like working class, like poor, lower income? What I grew up with in Yorkshire, you see, that's obviously the people from those communities always have the hardest time increasing. Obviously, people are like, black people, Asian people have it, but also white people, if they're from that background, it's hard for them. Is that kind of a community you focus on with your foundation?
Yeah, so yeah, it's for pupils or young people from lower income families.
Yeah,
It's also looking at geographically as well of where they're based,
yeah,
because postcode lottery, you could be somewhere and not actually get tapped into in terms of
yeah,
the
yeah,
talent that you have as well. And also it's the mindset of people who are successful and are doing well. And when you speak to them, is that they had a network, you know,
yeah. That's true.
and they had a range of people that they could go and speak to, who could actually say to you, actually do it this way, think about doing it that way. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that hold people back, is they're too big in their pond. They don't see people that are actually doing it. Because if I take myself living in Bermondsey at that time, well, Bermondsey's really expensive now, but during
Yeah,
that time, anyone who did do really well disappeared. Why did
yeah,
they disappear? Is because they made enough money. What you're now seeing is, oh, I'm believing in faith, almost. Everyone's saying, work hard, do this at uni, do this at school. But you can't actually see someone who's actually done it. So what you're actually relying on is blind faith, you know,
yeah, yeah,
because like, if I just take my mum, for example, she would say to me, make sure you read your books, make sure you do really well in uni and stuff like that. But my mum had never done it.
Yeah.
or I had an uncle who had a master's and a PhD, but wasn't in a great job and was really struggling for money. So
Yeah.
if everyone's telling you to go and do well in school, you're like, but I look around at me, the people that have done it, so why should I do it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, the mentors is, like you said before, is such a key thing, and I think people should have multiple mentors, and it changes different times. But people, what I find as well is, like, it's amazing how willing people are to help when you actually ask them. But most people, especially someone from like a lower income background, like especially a kid, they just wouldn't have the confidence to think. But what they'd actually be surprised is how much people do want to help if they actually contacted them. That's what I think.
Definitely. And I even go back to the point, I loved what you just said there actually, was about multiple mentors.
Yeah.
We all have mentors, but I think when we put the term,
Yeah, exactly.
it's almost going, Dan, will you be my mentor? It's almost going to, will you marry me, Dan? Will
Yeah.
you be my mentor? It's so formal,
Yeah.
right? And that person who you want to be your mentor is like, this is a commitment, right? What do I
Exactly.
need to do? So they get a bit worried about that. But actually, by saying to someone, actually, could I just pick your ear about this? Could I just get your thoughts on this? That is actually the mentoring process happening, because
Exactly.
they're actually explaining what they've been through and what to kind of avoid. So
Yeah.
yeah, so
That's good. So, Lauren, so we're probably getting close to time now. That's super interesting. So, what one thing I was curious about. Well, you mentioned like you were doing websites for Premiership footballers and stuff. Like, how did you were working with? Like, how did you meet all these people? Was it because you mentioned you had a business partner, but you never really went into that? Like, that's a friend. You said he was a friend of yours, but like, do you have different responsibilities? And is he the one with these connections, or how did you end up like meeting all these famous people?
So my business partner, Emmanuel, he is in charge of like technical development and everything.
Yeah.
So I used to program. I don't program as much as I used to. I was actually responsible for going out and getting the contracts and the
Yeah.
networks. And it would just be at different events where I would network, and I just wouldn't be afraid to go and speak to anyone.
Yeah.
So I remember being at an event and someone said, "Oh, that's Raheem Sterling's agent." So I went over to him and spoke to him and built up a rapport with him. And then he introduced me to his clientele. And then what I found with footballers, if you do one, a lot of them will come to you,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. So getting that first one, the other footballers came to us as well. And then you've also got your other celebrities. But a funny thing about that, and what I learned from that, is celebrities are great, to have on them for kind of commercial and marketing, but they're not our biggest clients in terms of
Yeah.
actual paying,
A lot of them want things cheap because they know their value to you as a name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we don't mind. It's that balance, that playoff, and that's where it comes to business. Like, actually, if I do it for this discounted price,
Yeah.
what is going to be my payoff? In terms of how is
Definitely.
that paid forward? But that's what I just say for a young person or anyone thinking about that is never give anything of your services for free. There has to be a trade-off, because the moment you do that, you're undervaluing yourself. You know,
Well,
so
I'd say,
sorry,
like, yeah, you're right. But I mean, I think there are times you should do things for free. But I think you're saying the same thing. Like, but there's got to be a benefit down the line. You've got to see, well, I'm doing this for free, but I can get this. Because I've done tons of stuff for free. Some of it I shouldn't have done, but some stuff really paid off to other things. I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely. And
Yeah.
yes, just to make that clear, is if you're doing it for free, you've got to think, what is the payoff? And that's why I say don't do it for free, or just like, okay, they've come and they've said, right,
Yeah.
I'm whoever, do it for me. Is actually, what can you get out of that? So say, for example, if you've got a footballer that comes to you, this is me just using an example here, and they say, can you do my website for free? Okay, maybe I could do it because they're the hot property at the moment. But if I'm going to do it for free, the name of my company needs to be on your website. You need to do a couple of social media posts for me, you
Yeah.
know. So
Yeah. That's
it's
great
not
advice.
free, because actually they're marketing you. They might have 3 million followers.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
free. And to pay for someone to do that, companies pay thousands of pounds for people with followers to repost them. So that's what I mean in terms of free, is always think about what you are going to get from this situation. And actually, is it going to help you?
Yeah. Lawrence, it's a great place to finish. Thanks very much for the chat. We should definitely do it again. If you're on for it, we'll do another. I'm sure I'll think of a bunch more things we can talk about.
Definitely.
Where should people find you online? Like, where are you most active? Like Twitter, LinkedIn, like blog? Where's the best place?
So the best place to find me online is justaguy_LT, and that's across all social media platforms such as Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and just keep on checking back at justaguy.co.uk. And also for web design and branding is Happy2Host LTD across all social media, and you'll be able to find us.
Great. Lawrence, pleasure to talk. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.